So then the laboratories, welcome to your first lab, by the way. We will be going over ArcGIS Pro installation. It has changed a little bit from last year, so I have updated the instructions here. But if you tried installing it prior to that, it might have been a little bit confusing, and I apologize for that, but things move rapidly in the computing world. So we'll go over how I think that's going to work, although I can't personally test it. So hopefully somebody will volunteer to be the guinea pig for the class. But there will be supplementary materials for the lab. Each lab links the instructions. So this takes you back to our Google Drive folder that has the instructions. Mr. Bolstead also has some really good YouTube videos. So there's a link to his YouTube page here and then his website. So let's go ahead and take a look at his website quickly, since we're starting the labs today. This is your textbook. If you haven't received yours yet, like I said before, there's chapters 1 and 3 on the website. You can download and read in PDF form. And then down here, below all this teacher stuff that you guys don't need, are links to the lab data as well. So you can either get these from our shared folder, which breaks it down by what we're doing by week, or you can get them from the textbook page if that's not available for some reason, or this works better for you. Note that we're not going to be doing all of these labs. I break it down a little bit differently, and some of them are pretty lengthy, so I break them into pieces. So we'll be doing labs 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8, and then some non-Bolstead labs that I've added for you guys. So does anybody have any questions about where to find the lab material? I haven't talked about ArcGIS Pro yet, but the class materials themselves, does anybody have any questions on that? So please do poke around on this site and get familiar with that. Again, I'll be posting announcements here. The only information I can't share here is the Zoom link. So please do save those emails or make sure you have those links saved somewhere. I won't be changing them from here on out, so there won't be any more 430 emails or 505 emails with the links. Apologies for those. But they'll stay the same from here on out. I just can't share them with the non-synchronous students. And we have some students that are cross-enrolled in synchronous and asynchronous, so it gets really confusing there. That's why everything else goes through this site, so I don't have to do it 4 times. All right. So your first assignment was class wikis. There are 2 copies of the template. We had some write-over disasters last year, so there's a backup copy if we need it. And then just as an example on mine of what I'm expecting to see from you. So introductions, a little bit of information about yourself, some sort of visual cue that doesn't have to be a photo of you, but it can be, but something that lets us know a little bit about you. I added to the template a table of contents with links to make it a little bit easier to find things. If it's not working or frustrating, it's not a requirement, but we got a little creative with wikis last year and learned some new things, and I find these helpful for jumping around. So your first lab, oops, do I zoom? Will be to make this map. So the primary steps for this are getting your ArcGIS Pro account set up. So we'll start there. Getting ArcGIS Pro installed, and then pulling together the materials to do this lab. So first step, has anybody not received the email inviting you to our UA Geomatics ArcGIS account? It would have come from notifications@arcgis.com probably. or potentially from Kaisha. I'm not sure how they arrived to you because mine didn't look the same. Does anybody have an example of that email you could show? I'll stop sharing my screen, look at somebody else's.
Hi, Brenna. I don't think I've received it. I just checked my email.
That's not good. Let me double check and make sure you were in the list that I sent her.
I got my invitation yesterday.
Okay.
I stand corrected. I did receive it.
Okay, great. Okay, it looks like I do have the instructions from Kaisha, so I'll go ahead and not throw anybody out there on the spot to share. Oh, where's that screen? There we go. Okay. So the link should take you, and let me go ahead and log out and see what happens. It should take you to the University of Alaska ArcGIS portal. And I can also add this to our information, make it a little bit easier to find. Whoops. That's not what I meant to do. Can you guys still hear me when I'm on a different screen?
Yes.
Cool. The magic of Windows workspaces. I can find my way back. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so you, does your email give you a temporary password, or what does it give you? Like a link to set up a password?
Mine gives me a link. It gives me a screen that says join University of Alaska, create a new account, or convert your ArcGIS public account. And it says it'll make the university the owner of my account.
Okay, so if you have a public account, if you've used ArcGIS before, I don't recommend converting it unless you want to pull that into the university domain somewhere, because then you lose somewhat control of anything you've done in the past. So I would recommend making a new one. I think the easiest is just to use whatever your university login is and set that up. So I personally have 3 ArcGIS login, and I just manage them separately. You can bounce back and forth between them really easily in ArcGIS Pro, so I haven't found any advantages to converting those at this time. So follow that link and create your ArcGIS login for the university and go ahead and get logged in. And you should see something like this with your home, your gallery, map, scene, groups, content, organization. You can control which screen you show up on, so it might look a little bit different when you log in. That's a setting that you can control. But for right now, we'll just go ahead and look at your licensing. So under your user thing right here, there's a thing that says My Settings. And once you get logged in, you're going to want to go there and go to licenses. I do want to just point out real quickly, take a look at the license that you have through the university. This GIS Professional Advanced is the highest level of license that you can get from Esri. These extensions are all extremely costly, like $500 to $600 a year extensions, each one of them. these apps, especially these field apps, are what are used really heavily in field data collection. So they're a really great tool to have under your belt. And then there's all kinds of other integrations for ArcGIS into different work environments like SharePoint, Office programs. You can do, I was just looking at this today, you can do mapping of data embedded in Excel. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with that. But down here towards the bottom, you'll see your ArcGIS Pro license. And there's a button next to that to download. And you'll want 2.8, probably in English, unless you have a preferred first language. And you can go ahead and download that and install it. You should not need a license like we used last year, is what I am told. So I want to make sure you guys can all get to this point and get past it and then log in with the same, make sure you save that login information that you set up this account with so that you can log into the software. And we'll go over that then. Does anybody have any questions to that point, or has anybody not received an email or found an email maybe in your junk mail?
I have a question. Do you want us to do this as you're doing it?
I want you to leave the lab today, if at all possible, with this installed and functional. So I'm stepping you through it kind of fast paced, just to make sure nobody leaves confused about where to start this week's lab. So yeah, thanks, Sydney. Your download speeds might take a while so that you can't actually get through it. You're not going to be graded on how far you get today, but I just want to make sure that I'm here to answer questions while you're doing it. Because there's definitely been confusion. I was confused going into it today. Everything changes rapidly in this world. So that'll get you started with the installation, and then I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like once you have ArcGIS installed. Here, over here. I'm still sharing, right? Yeah, okay. So this is my version of our map last year. You won't see that yet. You'll come in, oops, oh, I don't want a new project. You'll come in on some sort of login screen, which I can't show you. But it will have you log into your licensing. If you already use ArcGIS Pro for another organization and you want to change licenses to use your university license, this is where you're going to come for it. And like many things in ArcGIS Pro, it takes a second to find the information and load. So you'll see right now I'm licensed through the UA Geomatics licensing, and that's through ArcGIS Online. I'm using what's called a named user license, and you would only change that if you were in a different type of licensing situation than we're in. So for our class to use this license, you want to use the named user license. The link there is the same as the link for the UA Geomatics program. So it's the same base URL of the site that your invitation is going to take you to. So you'll want to make sure that your licensing is ArcGIS Online through this URL. And that should activate your software. Does anybody else? Oops. Oh, can't change it because I have it running twice. Has anybody else gotten to this point and confirmed that that works for you guys? Because I would love to know that before we leave today.
I'm still downloading.
Same.
All right, well, maybe by the end of the class, we'll get some that are installed so I can confirm that that's gonna work for you guys.
So I'm there, but it says my ArcGIS online is licensed through www.arcgis.com, not through the Geomatics lab.
Did you download it from here?
Yeah,
Okay, so can you go right here under project and go to licensing? Is this the window where you're seeing that message?
yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay, and if you go to configure, it's still not through. I don't know why that's so slow to load. Let's see what Kaisha's email said as well. Sydney, the VPN is a separate question, and actually I have a thing on that one. Have you accessed the Geomatics server yet?
I don't think so.
So you can, there's a workflow that they sent me here that hopefully has not also changed. And that tells you how to install Cisco AnyConnect on a Windows computer, or I think there's a different option for Mac users. I guess it's still Cisco AnyConnect. So depending on what your previous university VPN used, you might need to install this VPN. I also, go ahead.
No, it looks just like that. It's like the same. It's
Okay, you still have Cisco AnyConnect. So this should
Yeah.
have all of that login information of how to log into this, our Geomatics server.
okay.
You can't install the Cisco AnyConnect on the map, or was it the? Haven't played with the Mac part. That might be a question for the computer center. So let's step back to this question. Was that Autumn that was asking?
Yeah,
Is this what you see in your authorization URL?
no, it just says www.arcgis.com.
Okay, so you need to change this URL to match the Geomatics one. And I think I can show you that. I might have to relaunch.
Okay, it's forcing me to restart.
Okay, yeah. The ongoing frustration of Esri. So I definitely recommend that you make sure that you leave lots of time for assignments. I have to do the same thing at work. I just leave myself 3 times as much time as I think it should take, because it's going to crash and do all kinds of fun things. So not to start you out on a negative foot with Esri, but I think there are things they could do better.
Okay, that worked. Now I'm in the right licensing portal.
Okay. So now that we've confirmed that that's how you get licensed, just let this finish loading, and then I want to show you one other thing. So this is your license authorization. Like I said, you can have multiple licenses, and I just changed them here when I need to switch over. But the easy thing is to leave your licensing however it works best for you, and then add your portals. So in my portals, I have the UAA portal that we'll be using to share information. I have my work portal. I have a public account as well, and then other portals that I use throughout my work. And you can really easily change your portal at any time just by coming up here and switching your active portal to the one that you need at that moment for your data. So if you need to use data from another portal in your project, you can do that pretty easily. And we'll get into how the catalog works a bit later. But as I'm adding information to my project from my data catalog, I can hop over here to my portal. And right now I'm logged into my office portal, so I can pull in project data from Midway Island and throw that into my project from my office portal, or then I can switch over to my other portal and use that. So it's not difficult to get confused. Like right here, I think I'm logged into the University of Alaska account, but I might actually be licensed through my other license. So that's just something to keep an eye on. So I apologize that I don't have an example of that window, the welcome screens that you get. If anybody gets a chance to take a screen capture as you're installing ArcGIS and grab those welcome screens, I'll add them to a tutorial for the folks who come after you. But then you're going to make sure that you have your data for your first lab downloaded. So again, those are in here in the share folder under labs. I think week 1. Nope. What are you doing? Sorry, I clicked too many times. This zip file actually has the data for your first 2 labs. So go ahead and download that and download the instructions for lab 1. I do want to give you guys a little bit of direction on data storage, because this becomes incredibly important in GIS. You're basically going to be juggling files all the time. And so you need to have a really good personal file management system in place. So for me, when I'm working with large material or projects where I know things are going to change a lot, I don't keep them on my C drive under my documents because Windows likes to do all kinds of weird things with my documents these days. I have my own folder on an external drive, which is not necessary, but this is how I do it, specifically for my GIS. And I have all of my ArcGIS projects in one place. And then I have all of my projects for this class in one folder. So you can just consistently download, you can download all the lab materials from the book. And at one point I had them all on the Geomatics server as well. I can't get on it anymore. I'm having, it fights with my VPN. But I think there's a shared drive on the Geomatics folder that might still have a copy of our lab materials. So that's another place you can download from. anyway, make sure that you have all of those stored in one place and that you also store your projects there. So I'm going to step you guys through what building a new project looks like. You can start your project a number of different ways. We're not going to get into scenes at all in this class, but we'll use the catalog and the map both. It's easiest to just go ahead and start with a map because you're going to have a catalog in that anyway. Make sure that you browse to your folder. Come over here. So I want to store this project in here in my GIS A101 folder. I'm not going to make a new folder for it in here because Esri will do that for you if you tell it to. And I'm going to make this something so I know where to find it again. And I'm going to have it create a folder. That way, everything for this project lives inside a folder called Lab 1 Fall 2021. So now that I have that map project created, you can see it made a folder in my GIS A101 folder. And it will automatically make an index folder, a geodatabase folder, and an import log folder. This is your project file. And this is a table index that keeps track of changes to your project file. Projects are not super portable. So you can't just, well, I think you can copy this folder and move things around. But if you have things linked to other drives, they can get broken. So the easiest way to, the easiest way to move a file is to copy this folder somewhere else. But you need to make sure that you take the whole folder with you. If you save the project to another location, I think it moves just the APRX file and it keeps the data all linked in the same place. So it's good to kind of have a plan in advance of how you're going to manage your files. Because like I said, file management is super important for just GIS practice in general. So this geodatabase folder is automatically created. ArcGIS Esri has gone to a geodatabase model. So instead of adding a whole bunch of different files to your project, they encourage you to use a single database to manage your data. The one downside to that is this collection of files means absolutely nothing to most people. And you're not going to be able to just go in here and grab data out and share it. This is kind of a black box database format. So we'll go over at some point how you do share data, but just be aware this GDB folder is actually a self-contained file geodatabase, and it's critical for your project. So try to make sure it doesn't get broken. They can get pretty easily corrupted as well. And I think they have some, tools that can help recover corrupted geodatabase. So that's file management. Does anybody have questions about that? Make sure if you're on the Geomatics server and you're using any of the shared materials that you're not writing directly to those folders, because that means you'll be editing the data that other people will be using. So make sure that you're storing things appropriately on the Geomatics server. You should have your own storage folder. And that information should have come from the Geomatics department. If you need help with that, let me know and I'll find out more. So again, just be aware of where you are writing data, and so you're not just throwing things around willy-nilly where you can't find them later and where other people don't know what to do with them. Okay. So I'm just going to make sure that everybody's got a start on getting everything downloaded and on where to find instructions and things, and then we'll take a short break. So does anybody have questions about where to get the lab materials?
Yeah, could you show us where to get them again? I couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed it.
No problem. So there's the class shared folder, which is also linked from the class site. If you go to the class site, there's a Google Drive folder, and there's a copy of everything right there. We're gonna spend weeks 1 and 2 doing lab 1. So that zip file is in the week 1 folder. I think there's a copy in week 2 also, but it'll be all the materials for labs 1 and 2, which we'll actually spend a few weeks on. And if at any point you can't get to this drive for some reason, I think I've got everybody added, but if I've missed anything or if you need another email address added, please let me know. You can always get it from the class website. So essentially there's never any excuses to not have your materials. I don't know if they come, I think my old one came with a CD, the textbook came with a CD, but I don't know if that has the lab materials on the new version. But anyway, everything's here. And that is also linked from the class site. There's a link right here to the textbook. And those materials come with this instruction document written by the textbook author. So these will be the step-by-step instructions that you follow for the lab. I've also written some supplementary instructions for each of the labs, mostly things that I found that weren't terribly well explained or were a little bit confusing. This first lab instruction, oh, that was, yeah, another thing I wanted to show you guys is how to set some default settings. Oops, no, hitting the wrong button there. So if you go to your project options, this is where you change your overall settings for ArcGIS. There's a couple of key things that I like to change here, but you can set your general default folder here. So right now mine goes to my D partition and my ArcGIS folder, but then I kind of file things a little bit more within that ArcGIS folder. You can change the default of whether a new folder gets made for a project, but I think you probably want to make a new folder for every project. Otherwise, you might have issues with things getting overwritten. So you can change some of your basic settings there. I like to use the dark theme as much as possible on my computer because I spend way more time than is healthy in front of a computer, and I like to protect my eyes. So that's how you do that if you like the dark theme. And I think most of the rest of it you can step through if there's anything that you're having issues with. There are some nice features if you're used to using a different software where, say, the zoom is a different direction and you get frustrated when you switch back and forth. You can control that here. I think their zoom is just terribly fast. Oh, and it looks like they've added some settings for that. So maybe that'll help. I do a lot of zooming in and out, and I find ArcGIS just really frustrating for that. So those are general settings there. So anyway, that is some of the supplementary stuff that I stepped through on this one. I do want you to make sure that you know where your files are going, especially if you're on the shared Geomatics server. And then this steps you through other things. Think about your file naming, because it's hard to find things again if you name them badly. It's no longer as big of a problem to put spaces in things, but you'll see that with a lot of long-term computer users. They use underscores instead of spaces. They don't use special characters. And there are still some tools inside Esri that haven't been fully modernized that will break just because you put a space in your file name, and that can cost you hours of troubleshooting. So I still don't put spaces in things for that reason. All right, does anybody have any questions on that initial setup? Downloading the lab data, downloading the instructions, finding the instructions on the class site?